Hey guys, I'm Daniela. I'm a junior at Alvarez, and I'm going to be interviewing Miss Blanca Baltazar today. And before I introduce what we're going to talk about, I want to introduce my co-interviewer, Andrea.
Hello, everyone. I am the second interviewer for today. My name is Andrea Rosiles. I am a junior attending Everett Alvarez High School.
So I want to start by acknowledging that this is Women's History Month, and we're going to be talking about topics and discussing topics regarding women's history and issues and empowerment. And with that, my first question is to formally introduce, Miss Blanca and her job title and what she does.
Great. So Andrea and Daniela, thank you so much for having me be part of Women's History Month. I'm very honored that you asked to get some of my thoughts. So my name is Dr. Blanca Baltazar-Sabbah, and I am the Associate Superintendent of Instructional Services for the Salinas Union High School District. And I do a lot of different things, but one of, I think, the most important things that I do is I help build the budget. And with that process, prioritize services for students. So I work very closely with the superintendent, with the principals and other administrators in the district, and we basically listen to stakeholder input to help inform our decisions. So our stakeholders are community members, students, parents, teachers, classified staff, all of our school community. So to give you an example of what that looks like, a few years ago when we were doing the LCAP survey, we asked students to give us input on what they thought we needed in our schools. And after we looked at the data, we began to see that students are requesting increased mental health services. And so we really started to look at how we could support students and increase social emotional resources that we had available at the schools. And so we took that opportunity and we took the recommendation to the Board of Trustees, and they approved that we have a therapist at every school. And then we also began to explore the idea of having social workers that would be both a therapist, a licensed therapist, and had a counseling credential. And we started planning on the wellness center buildings, which Everett Alvarez High School is one of the first schools to open their wellness center. And the purpose is really to provide those wraparound services. And that idea would not have come to fruition had it not been for listening to student voices and getting the approval from the board. So that's one aspect of my work. I do oversee 9 different departments in the district, and their role is to provide a variety of programs for teachers, classified staff, students, and parents. So you might be familiar with programs like ROP or English Learner Program, special education, adult education, just to name a few. So those are some of the departments that I oversee.
Yeah, of course. In regards to women's history, why do you think it's important to learn and discuss, women's history, especially in this month that we're celebrating and we're recognizing?
So I had a college professor once tell me that women's history was important because it is human history. And that really resonated with me because as I reflected on how most history books focused on the contributions of men and not women, I began to really wonder how we could have a true understanding of history without the perspective and experiences of women. So I believe that when we highlight women's contribution, it makes us equal humans. And I also believe that it is important to learn because women have always been awesome. And it is important for every generation to learn about how women have influenced human civilization.
As you mentioned, women are awesome, right? Is there a leader that you look up to?
Yes, there are many leaders, and the one I'd like to highlight today is Dolores Huerta. And I look up to her because she is a labor and civil rights activist, and she is also a mother of 11 children. She co founded the United Farm Workers Union along with Cesar Chavez. And I admire her because she brought women into the labor movement and challenged sexism and racism in the workplace and in her work. And her story really resonates with me because my dad worked in the strawberry fields. It was a very low paying job with no health insurance. And my mom was a cannery worker, and she was displaced after the Watsonville canning strike in the mid 1980s. And it was a movement that was primarily led by women and women of color. And so they were, the advocacy for better wages, fair working conditions, health insurance are all part of what Dolores continues to fight for. And so I share part of her story resonates with me.
Yeah. Also, not just celebrating and acknowledging feminist accomplishments, how do you believe we can progress even further?
So I believe that we need to be more inclusive of listening to women and girls' voices in decision making. So whether you're in a class, in a group, or in the workplace, we need to be included in decisions that impact us. Additionally, I would say that we need to have gender equity when it comes to salaries and positions of power, whether it's being the CEO of a company, an elected official, a professional athlete. I think we need to continue to work towards equal pay for men and women in all employment sectors.
As you said, the gender gap, right? How did you reach your level of success given the sector's gender gap, especially among leadership?
So I will say that first and foremost, I attribute my success to the two most important women in my life, which is my grandmother, Maria de Jesus, and my mom, Silvia. My grandmother taught me about being true to oneself, to be strong in the midst of storms, and to have faith that things will work out. And I would say that my mom, she became a widow at the age of 40 and she never remarried. She went to adult school to learn English and earn her GED. Then she went to college to become a preschool teacher, all while having four children. I am the oldest of the four, so I always had a lot of responsibilities, but they became even greater when my dad died. And so my goal was to be a first generation college graduate and immediately start teaching so that I could help my family. And I will say that I was very fortunate along the way to have individuals that mentored me in the workplace and saw a potential in me to become a school leader. And I also believe that the values that my family instilled in me have helped me be successful. And those values include having a strong work ethic, working well with others, being honest, and always learning from my mistakes. And most importantly, acknowledging when I have made a mistake. So being humble is very important as well.
Being a woman in a distinguished position, what were like the obstacles along the way, and how did you overcome those obstacles?
There have been many, but I will say that as a woman of color in my early teaching years, I was questioned about my credentials and my degrees. I was asked if I knew my content area and what university I had graduated from. And it was really a lot of kind of in your face questions that were really difficult as a first year teacher and second year teacher. And so, to be honest, I just focused on teaching my students. And when they were successful, the questioning stopped, right? And as I moved into administration, I was one of a few women on the administrative team. So I felt like I didn't really have a voice. And it's it's then when I started to realize how important networking is, and I started mentoring other women who were aspiring to be administrators, and that helped me like create a network of support, while at the same time I was helping to lift them into leadership positions.
Finally, asking my last question, I wanted to end by asking, when faced with misogyny or when your authority is questioned, as you were saying, how do you respond and confront it?
Mm. That is a very good question. I will say that I've become more skilled and courageous as I've grown older. And unfortunately, I have dealt with prejudice because I am a woman. And for the most part, I tend to address it with the individual privately. I'm very clear that it is not acceptable and that I will not tolerate that type of behavior. But I didn't always address it. It wasn't until I was a college graduate that I began to really identify this type of behavior and how inappropriate it was. And, sometimes comments can be so subtle that I didn't recognize them. But now, I do recognize them and I address them immediately.
Well, thank you so much for allowing us to interview you for Women's History Month. I don't know if Andrea has any last words that she wants to say.
It was an honor to interview you. This is the highlight of my year right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity.